is definitely going to be a completely different project from what I'm used to create on this channel, because I usually create things that are more towards the realism area. Graphite, charcoal, pastels. This week was something that was a lot of things going on, and especially when I was finished with another project that took a long time for me to create, and I was still in the mood of doing something with pencils and a lot of colors, and I felt maybe I should give color pencils a try. For some reason I just remembered that I have this coloring book, and when I found it I was looking through it, and the theme of this one is called nature. Fits perfectly for having a stress relief, you know, being out in nature and all that. If you're familiar with, I think they're called mandalas. They are these rounded circles. Each circle of that circle, each pattern is repeating itself all the way around. But I know that mandalas are very popular right now in tattoos. I'm thinking about maybe getting something for myself here, since I got this, made a design for this one myself. So this one was also very inspired by mandalas. If you want me to talk more about this and the idea behind all of these details, because I didn't use random details, everything in this tattoo was supposed to represent myself. So if you want me to make a more detailed video about that, then sure, I will. And I also will include the sketch that I made. Some of these reminds me a bit of the style of mandala. If you think about having these repeating patterns but in a circle, that's pretty much what a mandala looks like. This reminds me a bit of color by numbers, but still there are no numbers and they're more detailed. This one is definitely very inspired by mandalas in the style. I'm going to take a look in this one and see if I find a pattern that I like and try out to see how the paper feels and how I feel like the applications work. I do not have any more higher end colored pencils. I have these more like cheap colored pencils that you can buy at the grocery store, and I'm not sure how they work on like blending and that stuff. But if I find that I seem to like to work on this, then maybe I will invest in much better quality in colored pencils. Or maybe I can use other mediums instead of colored pencils. Yeah, but I'm gonna see if I can find a pattern here that I like, and then I'm gonna start working on this coloring book. So I had a few pictures here in mind, because I saw a mandala here that has a lot of these blues and purples and turquoise, and instantly when I saw this picture of the peacock, I was thinking that the shades of a peacock feather has a lot of the blues and purples and greens. So maybe for now it's a lot of tiny details on this one, and I do not want to risk making a blurry mess on this one. Maybe I will have this one in mind and do it in another video. The same with this one. This is an owl, and it had like a mandala. You can see that split this one in half. The owl is the exact same on each side, so it's just a mirrored image of the same pattern. Like the peacock, this one is a tiny picture, so it's a lot of tiny details. These details here, they're so tiny. Maybe I can go over it with one shade darker and then gradually make it a bit brighter when I go down, but I can't paint each section on its own here, because that's going to make it a lot of a mess. I want to have this one in mind also, so maybe I will work on that one. And I know my mom likes owls, so if I'll make this one, then maybe I will frame it and give it to her. So another one that I saw that could be a good start would be this butterfly. So this one has a repeating pattern, so like the owl, if you split it in half, you can see it's the same shape. So I think this one could be a good practice for me to start with these patterns, because I have never worked with mandalas before. It's a lot of, I know it's all about being artistic and use whatever color combinations you want, but at the same time I do not want to make an application that makes two patterns blend in too much with each other. I want each pattern to stand out on its own. You can see details here. The pattern looks very similar to a peacock feather here and here, so it definitely reminds me of, we have a butterfly here in Sweden. It's called peacock eye because it has patterns on its wings that looks like, I don't even know if it's supposed to look like a peacock feather, but it definitely looks like it has eyes on its wings, but it has a lot of pretty shades. I'm gonna take a break and look through my colored pencils and see which color combination I want to make. I'm already thinking about the patterns and the shades and gradients. Not the colors yet, but get back to you when I made up my mind. So I picked out some of these shades. I have a lot more in here, but I'm not sure yet about the color combinations. I think I'm going to go with all of these more cool tones. I picked out some reds and some greens, but I'm a bit unsure about these. Main focus is going to be these shades, not these shades. We'll see. I found one picture here that reminded me of the detail here, and it looks like to get this gradient effect from the outside going in, if you look at it from further away, each individual part of the details here, they have one shade that is slightly darker than the other, so you can get this gradient from further away, even though each part is just one shade that is colored in. So that's perfect if you're working with something that has tiny details and it's just going to look like a mess if you try to get these gradients out of it. So you can try to add different shades next to each other instead, and that can give you a cool gradient. I'm gonna start with this wing. I think I'm gonna start to try to get some cool gradient here. Maybe I'll try to make it look like it's darker here and goes brighter there in the center, and then have a gradient going down also. I'm gonna try that. If it doesn't look good, then just fill it in one shade. I'm gonna try and see if these shades could work. I try to keep them next to each other in the order that I'm supposed to apply them. So hopefully this is going to work. I'm gonna start with this part and the purple. Like I said earlier, I am applying it in a light pressure, so I can easily go over with shades to create darker and brighter. I'm gonna try and go over with a bluish purple because I realized this one is a bit more of a reddish purple. Okay. So I'm trying to make the effect that it looks like these feathers are a bit beveled, so that's why the center is a bit brighter. On each line I'm giving it sort of a shade, like each part is a bit rounded. So I'm going a bit back and forth because these color pencils, they look a bit different from what they look like here on either the tip or the wooden part. Obviously that's pretty normal that the pencils doesn't really look the shade that's represented. That's why I'm going over with a light pressure, and then I go back and forth with another shade. So I went over with a blue shade here, and I felt like the blue one made a bit of a impact, gave it something extra, I think. Maybe lightly go over with a little bit of blue just to give something more, because now it's a lot of purples and pinks, so I think the blue one is going to give it something. Break up all of these shades. I think that's good enough. I feel if I go over too much I'm going to make a smudgy mess. Like I said, you can't really blend colored pencils as easily. At least not these ones. These are not professional colored pencils. These are cheap colored pencils that you can buy at your grocery store. I think when I have applied all of these shades, I'm gonna try and use white ink. Maybe I can bring back some cool white highlights. Maybe I'll add something to these parts. If I make them a darker cool gradient and then I go over with maybe some white dots. So someone who did it when they made some kind of black gradient, because they made zodiac mandala and they had a black gradient and then had some white dots to make it look like a star constellation. So I'm gonna use that idea, but I'm going to use some colored gradients here, but make these gradients darker so you can actually see it. Yeah, I think I have an idea. Maybe I should make like a galaxy theme to this, because these shades reminds me of a galaxy. So if I try to think that these have the shades of a galaxy, so maybe some dark blues going into gradients of purple and some pinks. I can look up some pictures of galaxies and then I have that in mind so I know what color combinations I want to create, and then I start to add it to this pattern. So this is pretty much all I got so far. Like I said, these are not expensive color pencils, so they are a bit of a challenge to work with. So I have to work from light layers and then just build up with more and more pressures. And I have to think about where I add the actual pressure, depending on what color I am actually using. When I'm working on the purple, I add more pressure now here, where it's supposed to be the deepest purple. And then when I go with the pink, I add more pressure here, add less pressure when it's so it can actually blend in with the purple. And then I'm going to add a little bit of blue up here, just to get these blue shades in. Something like that. So I may not get the smoothest gradients, but I try my best, and I can hide my mistakes with some white ink. What it would look like if I add some reddish tones. More deepens the pink a bit. I guess to get it close enough to a galaxy, I guess you have to add probably black. But I have all these black patterns, so if I add something as deep as black, then it's going to blend in too much, I guess. So it's pretty much all about the shades here. So I'm gonna try this technique here all the way around. Then I'll see what I'm going to do with the smaller details. So I want to add maybe a little bit of turquoise and blues. So I think I'm going to add that to some of these tinier details to make them stand out. Otherwise, if they're too dark, they're going to just blend in too much. It might even be cool if I have some of these bright green mixed in with some turquoise. If I have any light blues, yeah, I'm gonna try these too. But I'm going to finish these ones first, see what that looks like. I've been playing around a bit with these shades. I made a bit of a rainbow here, where I started off with the warm tones here. So it goes here, ends with the yellow here, so it starts with the green here, so the cool tones are on the outside and the warm tones are on the inside. Even though the green is a bit warm, but it's just so they stand out from each other. And then I decided to add a little bit of orange and more of the red lower part of these gradients here, so it looks more like a sunset. So I'm not sure. I'm going to add these white dots. I'm going to have to see when I'm finished the whole area here, and if I feel like it's going to be too much to add some white ink, then I won't add it here, but maybe I might add some white dots in these black parts. So I'm going to create something similar of this part here and here and maybe here. I'm gonna see how that looks, and then I'm going to see, probably gonna add some of these purplish tones outside. Let's see how that's going to turn out. I'm even using these for like eraser pencils. They're by Tombow Mono Zero. It's just like a mechanical pencil, and you just click and you have a piece of eraser here. So this is the rectangular one, and I have one that is just a round, thinner. I don't know where it is right now, but I find that this one works great because it's a bit stiff, so it's easier for me to create a bright line just to enhance these highlights. But I think that I'm going to add more intensity to these highlights with white ink, and I even think about adding more depth to these colors here. Maybe I'll do that with just regular markers. I have some cheap markers. I'm gonna see if I can do that, because I find that the waxy finish of the colored pencils can help markers to blend in together, so I usually just dab some markers and then blend them out. I'm gonna see if that works, because I feel like I don't have that much contrast right now. Hard to tell. I need to finish one part of the wings so I can see how the colors look like when they are finished. And if I think that it looks like it's a bit, the contrast isn't really there, then I might go over with some markers to enhance the saturation and the color contrast. So I'm just gonna continue working on this, and you can see I'm trying to create these highlights here, so I'm leaving this part white, and if I accidentally go over too much, then I just use the eraser to enhance the highlights. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm gonna continue adding this effect to other parts. So I'm going to talk a bit quiet now because it's getting pretty late. It's almost 11 o'clock. Yeah, I am someone who is up very late, especially when I'm working on something that I'm getting so excited about, especially when it's a lot of colors and all that stuff. So I'm trying to avoid staying up too late, because sometimes when I'm working on projects like this, I can be up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But I've been working off camera here, so you might see that some of these areas colors are a bit brighter. And what I did is I actually went over with some of these sheet markers that you also can buy at your grocery store or at the kids section. I guess that's where I bought these. So I just went over with these markers on top of the colored pencils, because the colored pencils has a waxy surface, so I find that if I apply the markers on top of the colored pencils, it's almost like they are gliding on top of the colored pencils and can blend different shades of markers together. Obviously you can see it's a bit rough. Yes, the shades are brighter. These are without markers and these are with, so I think I'm going to have to add some kind of white ink or something to just do something interesting about it to hide the mistakes. But here I find that the smaller parts works the best when I applied the markers. I made these lines so it looks almost like these parts are made of some kind of metal surface, chrome for example. So I have the colored pencils as the base color, and then I go over it with these markers, and then just to enhance the contrast. I'm gonna continue with applying the colored pencils like I did here to all these parts, and then I have to see what I'm going to do with the rest of this wing. Well, this seems to be a project where I seem to change my mind all the time. I know I said something like I was going for a galaxy themed mandala because I added all of these shades here. Then it turned more into a sunset style, and then I felt like it was all of these cool tones, and I felt maybe I should add some of these warm tones, and then it turned into a combination of sort of like a rainbow. I felt like it just took off. I think I used all the shades I had with my colored pencils. Actually, I find that this looks more interesting now when I have all of these shades. I felt if I only used purples and pinks, it was going to be a bit more monotone. Needed something to break all these shades up, because I have a lot of blue tones, so if I didn't include the greens and the warm tones, then I guess it would be more close to a sort of galaxy theme, especially if I added white dots so it looks like stars. So I think I'm going to add something with my white ink pens by Faber-Castell, these ones that I used in The Mandalorian, and obviously combine it with the Posca marker. Since this one, it's pretty dried out, so I combined it with the Posca marker. I don't know yet what I'm going to do. So I got one part of one wing done. I'm gonna try to have this part as an inspiration when I start working on this part, because here on the upper part of the wing it has similar patterns like this, so I'm going to try to repeat the same color combinations to get the same effect. But still I want the lower part of the wing to be separate from the upper part so they stand out on their own but still looks like they belong together. So I'm not sure yet how I'm going to do that. I have now this part of the wing that I have made as a guide, and then I'm going to see if I can repeat the pattern on the lower part of the wing. Obviously, when I have these two finished, then I can repeat the same pattern here. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do about the butterfly's body yet. I feel like I want to do something that makes the body also stand out. I was thinking that this part looked a bit like a shell, especially with this swirl here. So I tried to make it look like it had this kind of surface on it, like a shell has. And then I just played around with different shades to make it break up so I don't have the same color next to the other, because then it would all blend in too much. So I had a bit of a plan on these patterns. I want this shade, and I tried to make it look like I had a cool tone and a warm tone next to each other. But yeah, I'm going to add something extra, maybe with white ink, and maybe this part with the swirl here. I feel like maybe it's a bit lost, maybe it's a bit blank, just having that yellow-orange swirl. So maybe I'm going to add something like black ink and add some kind of dots or tiny circles inside of it. Something just to break up the pattern a bit. But I'm not sure yet. I think I'm going to do those parts as the final step when I have finished all the color applications of the wings, and then I can see if I need to add something extra. But I definitely feel like I want to add something with white ink because I just want to play around with it, you know, there's no limit here. Yeah, I'm gonna start on the lower part now. Actually thinking about what I'm going to do about these longer pieces, because these are parts that have more areas to fill in, while these parts are more of these tiny patterns. Like these parts here that looks like the squares, they are the same as this one, so I'm thinking about doing this same pattern with this gradient from darker green to the yellow. And then I have these patterns, they repeated there and also there, so I have those in mind. And all these that looks like lines going these directions, they're the same as these lines that are here, and I made them this turquoise and blue gradient. But I feel maybe it's going to be too much to have all of these in blues, so maybe I'll do a combination of blues and maybe something with green, because I feel like I am losing the green here when I'm thinking about how I'm going to apply these patterns, because I think these little moons, I think they are going to be more of these orange and yellow, and I think these longer blank pieces, I'm going to make those this gradient that I have here from purple to magenta shades. It's easier for me if I focus on patterns that are repeated from this pattern up here, and I use those color combinations here. and then I focus on and see which color do I actually want to add more of in this pattern. That's you. So I decided that these parts here, it didn't have a moon shade. What I decided is to actually fill these patterns in with yellow, so I have a bit more of the yellow show through. And also maybe it could be too much if all of these blank areas was this gradient from purple to pink. But I decided to make a little bit of a change because I felt like it looked better if I have the yellow tones next to these blue tones, and that makes them stand out so much better. So that's why I decided to fill in this part here with these orange and yellows, and this part here is going to be a gradient from purple to pink. These shades look so cool together, so, especially these gradients here and the fact that I have the combinations of the warm tones and blue tones. This far it looks so cool. I just hope that it won't get ruined when I fill in all the other areas. When I see these shades, I get a feeling of what color would look the best to make sure that these parts show up and stand out. I think maybe if I go for a deeper gradient from blue to green, but not in a bright shade like turquoise and the lime green, I go for something deeper. Or maybe I have those shades but I add shadows around it to make them look darker. I'm gonna see if that works. But first I'm gonna focus on these parts here, the little squares, because I had a piece of that up here and I know that I made a gradient from green to yellow in that one. I'm gonna add that first and then I'm gonna focus on the rest. I loosely colored in some shades here, so I decided to do every other part here, be adding blues and greens to make the patterns that I painted first stand out. And I felt that if I think about the color wheel, the shades here to the reddish tones here, they look better if I have green, while I have these yellow orange tones I added the blues. So that might make these parts stand out. So these are going to be much darker and I'm going to add more shades to them. I think I'm gonna do the shades from darker to brighter, maybe to give the illusion that it's actually grounded, like the direction of the patterns. I'm gonna try that. If it works, then I'll continue that. Or if I think that it's missing something or it's too bright, then I add more shades. Or maybe darkening the colors a lot more. Yeah, so this is what I came up with. It looks very cool now that I added these shadows. But if you compare this part of the wing to the upper part, this is more like pastels. They are not as dark as the shades on this part. So to get more depth into this one, I'm going to add the markers to deepen some of the tones and enhance the saturation. And I'm going to repeat the same color combinations on the opposite side of the butterfly. That's the next step, and then I'm going to see what I'm going to do with the upper section of the butterfly. felt like these green and the blue tones were a bit too bright for my tastes. So I went over the whole areas and then I just used a darker shade to deepen even more. So now they are a bit more in the background for these parts to stand out. Just a tiny difference just to break up the pattern a bit. So now I'm gonna start working on the shades with markers on all of these other details. Lower part of the wing is done. I have added the markers to create more of a deeper contrast, and the saturation is more enhanced now, so it looks like these two matches much better now when it comes to the vibrancy of the colors. Color wise they are the same. I felt like it was something off about this part up here, and then I realized that the lower part has more blacks in it, so that's why this one looks a bit muted compared to this one, because this one looks a bit more bold with all of these black thicker lines, while this one it's like the black is blending in a lot more with the shades here, so that's why it looks like it's non-existent if I'm looking at the viewfinder, because I'm thinking about what it looks like from further away, because here it seems to be okay, but here it seems like it's a bit lost. So maybe I'll go on the outside with a black ink pen and just make these lines a bit thicker. So I will do that before I start working on this part, so I can see if that's the thing that is making these so different from each other. Just gonna try with this one. These are Unipin Fine Line Pigment Ink Pen. They're black ink pens, and this is the number 6, so it's a bit thicker. This part is very thick, so I'm gonna try to make a similar thickness like this one on this part. So I'm going only on the outside all the way to that part. I'm gonna see if that works. Seems like on the other one these parts are thicker also all the way, break up the pattern, so maybe I have to go that first and then I thicken here. Just that tiny detail about adding more thickness to these outlines makes these two fit in together much more. I think I might have to thicken a bit more, especially here. I think I'll even make the lines on these parts thicker also. Since they are so large, I think the outlines on these needs to be thicker to break up this pattern a bit more. So I don't know, maybe it did make a bit of a difference. I noticed that the parts here, you can see that there are some color pencils that has gone over them, so they don't look as jet black anymore. So maybe I have to bring back the blackness to them, because now they look like a dark gray. Also, it might reflect a bit in the light, so that's why they don't look as black. So I have to see if maybe I have to go over all of these details with black ink. Maybe it's unnecessary. I feel like these two match each other anyway, and I don't want to do too much either, because I might feel like I'm ruining all these details, even though there are so many shades and colors. But I'm going to see if I will add some white ink and maybe more black ink. I was thinking about doing something about this one, if I'm going to add some dots or circles. I have dots here, so maybe I will add some dots. Maybe I could. I wonder what it would look like if I added some dots. Since this teardrop has some drops, maybe I should add one of those here. I can try and see what it would look like. Since the upper part had 3 dots in different sizes, I'm doing the same so they match, and now it feels like these break up a bit more. And I added something extra to the lower part. Made a huge difference just adding these dots here. I feel like I should add something here to break it up, like white dots or something. Maybe I can do the same style of either from large to small dots this way or the other way. But now I'm gonna take a break so I don't spend too much time looking at the drawing and then get confused with all these details and shades. It's better to take a break, walk away from the drawing, and then you can see what the result looks like and what you want to change or add. So at this point I have colored both wings of the butterfly, but I just wanted to show you what the difference looks like when I just applied the color pencils versus if I have applied some of the markers. You can definitely see difference. This wing has more depth and contrast, and it's because I feel like these color pencils that I'm using, I do not want to add too much pressure when I'm drawing with them, because if I do that I feel like they leave streaks. Doesn't have these smooth, nice blends. So I just wanted to show you the difference. But I wanted to try some techniques or effects with white ink and some black ink. And I was thinking about maybe adding some bigger black dots. Thinking about patterns of butterflies looks like, and some have large spots. Sometimes there are large black spots and then they have a white spot in the middle or other shades. So I'm gonna try and add a black spot here, the same black ink that I used before. Because I feel this is like a blank spot with just colors, so it's not much happening here. It needs something. I don't know if I should add smaller and smaller black dots, and then inside these dots I add a smaller dot that is white. So I'm gonna add a couple of black dots. I don't know if I'm going to add these to all of these parts, since they are smaller further down here. Yeah, I can make these spots smaller, but I don't know if I can add a white ink there. Reminds me a bit of butterfly wings because they have spots and dots. And then I'm going to try and use the technique that I used before with the white Posca marker and the Faber-Castell ink. I felt like this part, its own, if you zoomed out, it's like these colors just blended in together too much, but now it's breaking up a bit. I decided to add some white dots, not all of these, but just break up a bit. It gives it just something extra there. Not sure if I should add more black spots or tiny dots in some of these blue parts. I feel maybe if I add some black dots like I did there, maybe they get muted down too much. Maybe these parts where they meet here, maybe it will look good if I add some black dots, break up here. I think it actually does make a difference when I'm adding just these tiny dots. I'm wondering if I should do something about this green point here. Like this part here, I add a larger spot that gradually becomes smaller and then fill in the middle with white. Here's a sort of a teardrop shape, and here it's just a blank piece. So maybe if I create a teardrop, or more like diamond, since this part is pointed. If I add point like this and point inwards, then it's going to turn more into a diamond shade. Then fill that piece in with black, and then add white inside of it. I just added a white dot there in that point. And then I do the same here to break up all of these black. Sure breaks up all of these black bold lines here. It's tiny dots added in random places where I feel like the lines here, I mean they are cool, but still I feel I need to break up all of these black in some way. Especially up here I have some blacks too. I think I'm gonna add some tiny white dots there, but just this tiny detail that I added here looks like tiny pearls. Breaks up all of this black. Something about this, it gives me a fluid motion. I don't know if it reminds me of the ocean or like fishes or something. It makes it so interesting. So I want to enhance the fluid motion with some of these dots. I don't want to add too much either, because that's going to be too distracting. So it looks like the lines gradually become smaller. Oh no, that was not meant to happen. Okay, sort of fixed it. I have a hard time figuring out if I can add anything more when it comes to white dots in the upper part. I have all of these bold black lines. The upper wing, I think I should add some white dots like I did on the lower one. I think it gives it so much more now. I feel like, what is this butterfly missing? It's white dots. When I add these white dots, it's like these two blend in, but not like a mess, but it blends in to the point where they match. Because at first I thought I was going to add more bold black outlines. I felt like that wasn't it. Then I realized it was the white ink that was missing. I'm not adding the white ink all the way around these pieces, just the parts where I find it. Black ink is very bold. Almost makes it look like they are rhinestones or crystals that are shining, sparkling. I feel like I can't stop adding these white dots. I feel like there is always some area here that I find this part needs something and this part needs something. This is very subtle, it's not that too intense, but it's just something that breaks up all that green there. I know the colored pencil is a bit rough on this paper when I was trying to intensify the darkness here. That's why it looks like this. I don't know, it's something about this part here that I'm getting a bit unsure about. What is it that I'm missing? Need to think about it. I'm still a bit unsure about what I'm going to do with this part. I just added some white dots and added a little bit of white and a little bit of a black ink inside of it. But I don't know if that helps or not. I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'm gonna make the pointed parts of these a bit thicker, so I can, like I did with the other black bold lines, go over with a gradient of white dots. So I think maybe that helped a bit. So I'm going to, not all the way here, but I'm going from middle here and then fade out with the dots, like I did on some of these parts here. Got more dots than I actually planned, but it was because the brush didn't want to cooperate, so I think this is something that is bringing these parts together. Now it actually feels like something is happening in the design. You can see the difference between this part and this part when you're looking at the drawing from further away. So much more happening now. Just these shades, yeah, they are a bit muted down since they don't have the marker yet, but still these white dots show up so much when you're further away, so it gives something interesting. So I'm trying to not be tempted to add more of this white ink, because I feel like I had already added so much that if I go over with more ink, it's going to be overpowering and it's just going to be a mess of white dots. But I think I'm happy with this. So I'm going to do the same now on this side, and then I have the body of the butterfly left. Probably going to add something with white ink here also, so it matches the wings. I feel that yellow should be added more, and think that could look good for the body of this butterfly. In this video I didn't go into much details about, it was supposed to be about me drawing this coloring book. There's supposed to be a stress relief and if you have anxiety, but in this video I didn't go into much detail about my anxiety, what caused it, and how long I have been dealing with anxiety and stress and depression. I'm going to make a separate video about that. In this video I just wanted to focus more on the creative side. But one thing I want to mention is complete different from what I looked like in the middle of the video. You could see my hair was back like this. Now it's completely different. I added more colors, and also I have bangs now. If you're dealing with stress, you know that one of the side effects can be hair loss. You may notice in the video where I was talking about the process of the butterfly when I had my hair swooped back, you could maybe see along the hairline around my face. It looked a bit thin. I think it was around here. Because I don't know if you can see it when I put my hair back. We colored my hair like 2 days ago, so that's why I have a lot of color left in my scalp. That's a look. Yeah, all of these are like baby hairs that is growing out from hair loss. And since it was this length, I felt it would look better if I just cut some bangs, so it all would blend in much better. I wasn't going bald, it wasn't like that, but it was spinning out my hair, because I have a lot of hair, but I have a lot of fine hair. I don't have thick hair, so I noticed right away when I started to lose a lot of hair. I wasn't really that bothered by it. I knew it was stress related, and yeah, I felt, since I have a lot of hair, just cut some bangs. My mom helped me. She helped me with cutting my bangs. The parts that were darker, we bleached it so I could have this midnight blue tone show through. And then we played around. I still have, I don't know, maybe the camera isn't showing. Now it looks very like midnight electric blue almost. If you know those songs, you are an 80s freak like me. And also, yeah, deep purple, obviously. I am a music nerd all the way through, and I'm proud of it. Also, the color combinations of my hair with the darker pinks, magentas and purples together, and some of the blues, reminds me of the album cover of Pearl Jam 10. So when I talked about I look like 90s today, I feel like a complete kit here. Yeah, so this turned into something completely different than I planned from the beginning. I always seem to say that as a standard phrase, like, oh, this turned out to be something different than I planned from the beginning, like, always. Yeah, but this looks like, I don't know, maybe a butterfly on acid or something. A crazy rainbow butterfly. All these colors and vibrancy and how it glows. But I think this is what it's supposed to look like for me. This is my stress relief. Maybe this total chaos of colors here is my way to deal with the chaos in here. Put it on paper, like therapy, sort of. And yeah, what I was going to mention about the fact what this reminded me of, this wasn't planned from the beginning. Yeah, when I was going through the process of this, I said to myself, this reminds me a lot of... If you guys are familiar with the artist named Alex Gray, he makes a lot of artwork that is... They're very spiritual because he created artwork that he said that he saw these symbols when he was taking, I think it was ayahuasca. I think it's supposed to help you release, I think it's called DMT. It's something that you can release in your brain when you're meditating, but if you take this psychedelics, they enhance the process and make you release DMT much faster, which is only if you're experienced you can take those stuff. But I think if you work a lot with meditation you can easily release DMT, and but never mind that. Where I was going with this. Yeah, but when you release, I think it's called DMT, when you open your mind, like the consciousness is opening up to everything. You see these symbols and colors, the flow and everything comes together. And that's what his paintings are. He painted all the things that he saw when he was in that trance. Also, when I talked about music here, if you look at his artwork you may recognize them, because if you look at the album covers of the band Tool, they use his artwork in their album covers. It was 10,000 Days and Lateralis. Those two album covers have artwork by Alex Gray, so you may recognize his artwork from Tool. And I thought it was awesome, the fact that the butterfly turned out to look like this, the fact that it reminded me of the artwork by Alex Gray, and the fact that Tool is one of my favorite bands. So it's like maybe back in my mind, maybe I had a vision of what the butterfly was supposed to look like. All of these symbols reminded me maybe of the artwork in Tool album covers, and the fact that some of these parts look like eyes, and if you look at Lateralis it looks like a lot of tiny symbols, looks like eyes, supposed to be the third eye, and all those swirls. I remember when I painted this part, you know, what do you think? Oh, yeah. Exactly. I don't really know if there is so much more that I can say about this. It was really just me playing around with this and seeing how the tools work. Tool. Such a geek. Yeah, but I mentioned many times to the fact that I use cheap colored pencils. You're not going to get the best outcome or the best result, but I did the best I could with what I had, and the fact that I added these tiny dots gave it some more movement, like these swirls or spirals. When I didn't have these white dots and black dots, it was just a yellow blob on top of the butterfly. It's like, what is it doing here? It looks so off. But when I added these black dots and white dots, it felt like, alright, now it all comes together. Same thing with every other place on this butterfly. It was so much empty spaces. Oh my god, no, Pink Floyd. And also the fact that I thickened the outlines of the upper parts of the wing, because the lower parts of the wings, the outlines there was so much thicker than here, and it felt like they didn't really match. They seemed so unrelated to each other, even though they had some patterns that were similar, so I could add the same color combinations. But even though I had filled in every part, still felt like they didn't belong together. So I just thickened the outlines here, and that made it look like they fit in together much better. And I also like the fact that it looks like the butterfly's body is glowing red hot, because the outlines have this bright, vibrant red, and then it fades in with this orange and yellow and then white. But it was me just playing around a bit. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I had never worked on these kind of patterns before. I only colored in coloring books when I was little, before I started to make my own artwork, and then started with realism. But after a while, when you have been working so long with realism, it gets a bit boring and repeating. Yes, I love working with realism, but sometimes I feel like I need to do something else. And when I don't know what I'm going to do with artwork, I feel that I want to work with other media, or if it's cosplay or upgrading furniture, leather work. I can add realism to leather tooling also if I do figure carving. But when it comes to just the traditional pen and paper, I want to have more variety, and I feel like I only do realism working from a photograph. Even though I may have made the reference in Photoshop, it's still me looking at a finished product and just copying it to a piece of paper. And yes, it's a lot of work still, but I know what the outcome is going to look like. But with these, I have no idea. I have no plan. I just see the outlines and then I just play around with it. So the butterfly was just like the beginning of this. I have so many more pieces here to create. And one picture here that I was very interested in. This one. This is not a mandala or anything. It's just a inked style of some flowers. I'm not going to talk about what I'm planning to do with this design. That's going to be in the other video. But I wanted to give you a sneak peek of this is what I'm going to work on next. Yeah, but I hope you really liked this video. It's completely different from what I'm used to do. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for this project, which is going to be a very exciting one.